Hello again, it's Martin North and John Adams in the interest of the people. So hello John, it's good to see you again. We're back on the gold chase.
Yes, Martin, we are back on the gold chase. One of the reasons why we haven't spoken about the gold story in about 3 or 4 months is because where we left it was that Philip Lowe at the end of November at the CETA annual conference dinner basically was asked point blank about gold and basically said that the no intention for the gold to come back. Even though there was a lot of correspondence, a lot of things flying. So basically, they had told me to sort of go away. We're not going to answer any more questions. And then basically, I thought to myself, well, where's the next point in which we can raise the gold issue? And the next point was actually last week when the RBA governor fronted the House Economics Committee. They go in front of the committee twice a year, and so the RBA was there for 3 hours answering a whole series of questions about a whole range of topics under their responsibility. And the RBA did receive some questions about gold. Now there were some DFA viewers who wrote to the committee chair, Tim Wilson, and I can publicly say that one of those letters I hand-delivered to Tim directly and said, this is from a viewer who has seen our series on gold, would like for you to pose some questions to the governor directly. Here is the letter I hand-delivered to him. Tim said he would have a look at that letter and then sort of consider what sort of questioning he would approach when the government fronts the committee. So Tim Wilson, as the chair of the committee, did ask the RBA some questions on gold, and those questions revealed some interesting information, but also it's exposed, in my view, several holes in the RBA's public stance about this whole topic.
Okay, so just to sort of go back a little bit, we know that there was gold in London at some point, probably. Some of it was leased, probably. We're not sure where it is, possibly.
Yes.
And therefore, these questions that were posed were trying to find a little bit more out, and we actually got, I guess, stonewalled in those answers.
Yes, yes. Well, I mean, look, not particularly stonewalled. There were certain answers that just defy credibility in my view. So it raises. So last week raised more questions for me compared to compared to where I was maybe 2 weeks ago. So I thought we would cover quite a few aspects of this story, because I know there's a lot of regular viewers who are very interested in this gold story, particularly because the gold story has received some international reporting from Russia Today, and there has been some international gold experts who have effectively said that some of the claims we made last year, particularly around the audit, were valid, and there are more questions than answers about this whole gold scenario.
Okay, so let's get into it.
Exactly. So where I want to start first is when I was listening to the committee hearing, because it was on audio via the internet. The first thing that I just found staggered me was the RBA was not under oath. So this was when the committee chair, Tim Wilson, member for Goldstein, when he opened the committee hearings, he actually made a public statement to say that the RBA was not under oath. And let me go to directly what Tim Wilson said. So this is the quote: "I remind you that although the committee does not require you to give evidence under oath, the hearings are legal proceedings of the Parliament and warrant the same respect as proceedings of the House. The giving of false or misleading evidence is a serious matter and may, let me just say that, may be regarded as a contempt of Parliament." Now, when I heard that, my first reaction is stop the hearing. I mean, the thing is, there is no point in proceeding with the hearing from here on in, because one thing you have to understand about Parliament is, in the last decade, only one public servant has ever been investigated for potentially providing misleading evidence to Parliament, and that was Godwin Gretsch in the Oscar affair, when Malcolm Turnbull accused Kevin Rudd of misleading Parliament, and Godwin Gretsch, who was in Treasury, was the key witness. So Gretsch was investigated. He was found not to have misled Parliament, but he actually was found to have misled Treasury. So that was that story. But in one decade, one public servant has been investigated. Now, having been a public servant, having been a management consultant, having been an advisor to a senator, and who has been particularly on the Senate side, has seen this process. there has been occasions in the last decade where public servants knowingly misled Parliament, gave false information, not because of national security or anything like that, because they were covering up scandals that they didn't want the senators and Parliament to know. But it is a very big thing for a parliamentarian to accuse a senior public servant of basically lying to Parliament. It's a very big accusation. So the accusation, it is made on a very, very rare basis. And when we say rare, sort of like once. When this committee says you are not under oath, and if you say something that's untrue, the Parliament may find you in contempt. Well, it's basically a free license to say whatever you want. The thing is, the legality. This is like legal immunity because the RBA has never been investigated by Parliament for providing false or misleading information. And the other point to make is because a lot of this detail is very technical, it is very hard for a parliamentarian to really pinpoint and say to the governor, you lied on this particular aspect, therefore I'm going to hold you in contempt. So the fact that there was these guys could say whatever they want, none are under oath. I think this is material, and it really undermined the whole proceedings in the first place.
So it does ask the question then, really, doesn't it, as to what is the purpose of the committee, what is the purpose of the questioning? Because if you can pretty much say whatever you want to say without much consequence of that, then if you have a particular point of view or a particular interest that you want to pursue, you're going to pursue it.
Precisely. Separate to the gold question, he was asked about monetary policy, he was asked about housing. He said a lot of statements which you and I would fundamentally disagree with. So was he misleading on those points, or was it just a difference of opinion? Now, because there's that grey, parliamentarians are not going to say you lied to Parliament. So on this gold issue, look, I think not that they lied to Parliament, but I think that a lie was exposed through their answers. But the fact that these guys are not on the hook by being under oath, it just undermined the whole process to begin with. But we're at such a critical juncture in terms of the economy that you really do need some frank answers and some honest answers from the RBA governor, because in my view he is up to his neck in building up this debt bubble, him and his predecessor, and I think there's massive amounts of answers that they should be on the hook for, and yet they can come into the Parliament and not under oath. I just find that to be very significant, and it really undermines the whole process of investigating, having them answer questions. Because if this was in front of the US Congress, they would be under oath, and if they said something that was false, they could have been found to be, they could potentially be charged for being in contempt of Congress.
Yep. Okay.
So that's point number one. Point number two is, so we learnt about when some of these orders have happened. Now, Tim Wilson asked the RBA governor and the deputy governor, Guy Dobell, about when's the next audit and when was the last audit. Now, the reason why this is significant is at the CEDA annual conference dinner, the governor of the RBA said on record, we do regular audits. So how about we play that clip for the audience to be refreshed with what the governor actually said.
This is Anthony Ross from Chartered Accountants Australia, New Zealand. You spoke about building buffers into the system. I'd really love to know about Australia's gold reserves. So when the RBA plans to do another audit on our gold reserves, and with 99.9% of our current gold reserves in the Bank of England, whether the RBA has a plan to bring any of them back to Australia.
No, we don't. We do regular audits of our gold reserves to make sure all there and accounted for, and I can report that every audit is, we get a clean bill of health there. We keep the gold reserves in London because that's where the centre of the gold lending market is. By able to kind of lend out our gold temporarily, we can earn a small incremental return on it and cover some of the costs of holding those reserves. So I think it's kind of the right place for the gold to be. We don't have any plans to sell any more, to buy any more, or to bring it back to Australia.
So Martin, so we just heard the governor of the RBA say on the public record, we do regular audits of our gold reserves to make sure that they are all there and accounted for, and I can report that every audit we get a clean bill of health. Now, that's a very specific statement that he said in a public forum when asked about gold from one of our viewers to reassure the public that everything's okay. So we know there was we know that the last audit was in 2013. We know the next audit is in June of 2019, later this year. But there was an email between the RBA and the Bank of England in August of 2013, the lead up to the 2013 audit, which stated as a first-time review of the bank's gold holdings. So I'm pinning this email to suggest that the 2013 audit was the first audit, because the RBA wasn't asked last week when was the first audit. They just said when was the last audit. The last audit was 2013, but the RBA in this email to the Bank of England said that 2013 was the first audit. The questioner was asking, because the questioner watched our videos, the questioner was asking about when's the next physical audit, when are you going to physically check the gold, and the governor said we do regular audits. That it was a categorical false statement by the governor, and that was exposed last week. So I think that's very significant that, in my view, he misled the public. And the question is, well, why?
Okay, yeah, and so regular doesn't connote normally one.
Yes,
right.
Yeah. I think if you had a parent in a nursing home and you say, I regularly check on my mum and dad in the nursing home, well, how many times did you go see your mum and dad in the last 20 years? Or just one time for 3 days? If anyone said that, they would be, I mean, look, it doesn't pass the pub test. So you can't say it in that context. So you can't say in the context of checking Australia's gold that we do regular audits when you've only been in the vault one time in 20 years for 3 days. What the Deputy Governor, Guy Dobell, told Parliament last week was Australia was the first country to get access in terms of physical access to check the gold. He said, quote, we were the first country that the Bank of England, you can debate this with them, allowed to order their gold stocks, and then subsequently everyone else has joined that bandwagon, and now it's back to us again. So basically they said, we were the first one to get access, then everyone basically joined the bandwagon, so there's been other people going in to check their gold, and there's been a little bit of a rotation. And now it's Australia's turn in 2019. So that proves the point about this gold safe custody arrangement, that what we discovered last year was before 2013 there was no arrangement, and then they said, well, we need a contract. So before 2013, no one apparently, according to the RBA, no one in the world had walked in to check the gold. There was no arrangement, no contract. Now the RBA have busted the dam wide open. Now people get to go in on a regular basis. How that plays out, we're not entirely sure. But again, they have said, well, every country is able to have a turn, and the next turn for the RBA is in 2019, which is 6 years, which is again a very long time.
I think the thing that comes into my mind is, I wonder what triggered the Reserve Bank thinking, oh, it's about time we did a physical audit.
Yes. So we were speculating last year as to what was it that caused the RBA to have this audit. Now, the RBA says we were the first in the world to say we want to check our gold. Well, I suspect it was the rumours around Germany and its gold, and basically potential shenanigans happening. That is what my speculation. But again, the RBA should perhaps come out on the public record and say, if you were the first in the world to request this and to get access to it, what triggered you to put in the initial request?
What changed?
What changed?
Yep.
Yeah, and has that reason for you to trigger it? Has that reason, is that still a live reason, or has that reason become defunct? I mean, these are very valid questions, particularly because the audit was flawed and the RBA did not get unfettered access to all of our gold.
Yep.
So the RBA governor said we do regular audits. Now, the questioner meant physical. I took the question to be physical. I think the audience took the word physical, but the RBA, last week in front of the committee talked about financial audits. So every year, the financial statements of the RBA are subject to a financial audit. So the Deputy Governor tried to imply that that as part of this financial audit, they do a financial audit about the gold. And let me read that statement. This is the quote. If you think about the assets that we hold in our reserves, we have a whole bunch of US Treasuries. We audit them from a financial point of view as part of our annual accounts. And we do the same to the gold from a financial point of view. Well, Martin, what are US Treasuries? It's effectively a digital asset. Maybe there are some paperwork to support your ownership claim, but US Treasuries are numbers on a screen. So when they say to Parliament, we did a financial audit of the gold, basically, what does that mean? It means we own 80 tons of gold. This is the international price. Price times volume. This is the value. That's what we put on the balance sheet. That's what a financial audit of the gold is. And they said, well, this is part of our financial audit, which is just, again, complete nonsense. That the fact that they even tried to lump in a financial audit with an actual physical audit. So on this issue around inventory reconciliation. So the RBA the RBA website talks about how there's a regular reconciliation of the inventory, if any gold is moved in and out of the RBA's allocated account. So the question is, well, we were speculating last year, what does this inventory reconciliation mean? Now, that does not mean a physical check, because there's only ever been one check in 20 years. So what does that mean? We have a series of unique serial numbers. The Bank of England would have a list of serial numbers in some sort of spreadsheet. So what I suspect that inventory reconciliation means is we email the Bank of England. We say, show us the numbers that you say we own, the unique identifiers. We compare it against our list, and we basically make sure that the lists are basically equivalent. That's what an inventory reconciliation is. But again, that's not a physical check. So anytime the RBA is trying to make a claim that they do checks, they do audits, they do reconciliation, know that all of these other checks or audits do not include a physical inspection, because there's only ever been one, and that was in 2013.
Right. So once again, more obfuscation.
Exactly. So now we come to this issue about the bar list. Now, last year I made a statement that and it was a genuine sort of view of my at the time, that our gold had our national crest on it. Now, there are certain gold experts around the country who have emailed me and said that they believe that's not the case. That what basically you have a gold bar. It has two numbers on it. It has the manufacturer's serial number, and this is refined from Switzerland, and it has the Bank of England unique identifier. So the Bank of England has its own serial numbers, and you've got the manufacturer's serial numbers. Now, prior to the 2013 audit, the RBA only had the Bank of England serial numbers. They did not have the manufacturer numbers. So this has come out through FOI documents. So some people basically said, what did you know at the time? We just had the Bank of England identifiers. Now, one of the potential risks with this issue is that the Bank of England has never published a list of all of their bars with all of the serial numbers there, plus who owns those. So in theory, the RBA, so the Bank of England could say to the RBA, you own 1,000 bars. These are the numbers. But because there's no public list and we don't know who owns which bars, they could, if the Italians walk in, the Bank of England could say to the Italians, these bars with these numbers, you own them. So one of the risks with no public list, because there is no sort of, for example, there's nothing imprinted apparently on the gold as in our national crest. If the national crest was on there, that obviously, it would obviously suggest that this country in this allocated account actually owns this gold. But if what the gold experts have said to me is that there's no national crest on there, well, potentially the Bank of England could have said to one party, you own this and this is your number, but they could have said to another country, well, you own the same bar of gold. So some of the gold experts said, do we know categorically that we own 80 tons and we have the unique legal claim to that gold? The answer is no, because of this issue that there's no public bar list. There's no transparency. We can't actually compare between us and other countries that have stored there. So this is a new factor, complicating factor to the gold equation that some of the gold experts who I've been speaking to said the audit really didn't get on top of.
So what that means is you could potentially see a situation where they are doubling or triple counting or quadruple counting, right? So basically every country has the same fundamental list.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, so now I'm not saying that categorically that is happening, but that potentially could happen. No. Now, obviously, the Bank of England could try to clear it up if they published a public bar list, and you could sort of see what the numbers are and have some more transparency around that. But again, given that we don't have unfettered access to our gold, there's no genuine random sample. Do we know that the bars the Bank of England say we own? Number one, are they there? But number two is, do we have sole legal claim over those? Big question mark.
And I guess the other side of that is, I wonder which numbers the RBA actually now has. So whether they have the manufacturer sequence numbers or whether they have the RBA sequence numbers in their records.
Yes. Well, I mean that look. So I think from memory, and look, I'd have to check after the recording. So I think they have been able to solicit the manufacturer numbers, but again, I mean the manufacturer numbers again may not be able to say much because so now, for example, with our list, we potentially could go to another government and say, hey, the Bank of England says we own these bars. I want to check your numbers. Are they the same? Are they different? So
I can see that happening, John.
so very unlikely that sort of cross-party checking would happen.
Yeah.
But whether it's the manufacturer or whether it's these unique identifiers, some big questions about are they double counting? Are they triple counting? Particularly if the conspiracy is true that the gold has been leased from the BOE to the bullion banks that then been sold to Switzerland, malted down, and then sold to the Chinese. Now, the next issue we get to is this issue of gold leasing. There was a very remarkable statement that the Deputy Governor of the RBA made to the committee. No one in the committee fully realised the significance of the statement, and no one followed up. But it really sort of beggars belief that this statement could be made. So the chair is basically Tim Wilson. So Tim Wilson asked about gold leasing. Quote is, we lease it out, but we don't lease gold in. So this is the Deputy Governor, Dr. Dobell, yes. Then we have another member of Parliament saying, it doesn't actually move anywhere, does it? Deputy Governor says, no. That's the other thing. The other point I was going to make is that in those gold vaults, when people buy and sell gold, by and large, the gold never goes anywhere. It doesn't even necessarily get moved around too much, because every time you move gold, you can lose a bit of it. I mean, that literally the gold dust. Now, when I heard this, I'm thinking, hang on, you've only been in the vault for 3 to 5 days in 20 years, and now you're saying to Parliament, by and large, when we lease, the gold doesn't move. How does he know? Thing is, look, it's the most remarkable statement. I mean, in all seriousness, you don't have to be Perry Mason or Colombo to realise that he just made a statement that he has no way to prove whether Australia's gold is physically moved in the Bank of England or not. Now, he is probably making this statement on the basis that the Bank of England says, when you enter a lease agreement, we physically do not move your gold, it just stays here. But how does he know? He doesn't know, and yet he made this claim to Parliament, completely unsubstantiated, no evidence. And again, I will say this again, if the RBA has evidence to prove that when they leased in 20 years, the gold physically has not moved from its spot, show it to me. They can't.
Because they haven't done an audit.
How
do they know?
Exactly,
Yep.
exactly, and they didn't have unfettered access
Yep.
because of this issue of selecting a suitable random sample. So just to give the perspective to the viewer, there was the non-random component where they had to provide the serial numbers 4 to 6 weeks in advance, and then with the random sample component, it had to be suitable. It had to be you had to select bars close to where the non-random component was coming, but you didn't have unfettered access, and yet. He's saying when we lease, so this, what was the first video we did about the 11 tons? Where is it? Who's got it? Is the conspiracy true? Has it been melted down and sent to the Chinese? He says, now, why did he say this? Now, maybe I'm sure the RBA saw our videos because it got a lot of international attention, and maybe they said, well, we've got to say this just to quash any concerns that the gold has maybe left the Bank of England. But he just made the statement, zero evidence, and the fact that he would go on the public record and make such a fanciful statement, I mean, it just raises more questions than answers. So this is the RBA's website. It says, quote, London is the world's largest trading centre for gold. Storing gold at the BOE allows the RBA to readily access this market, as most gold participants prefer to take delivery in London. Well, the key word in this is delivery. We do not buy, we do not sell. The governor, the deputy governor just testified to Parliament, even though he's not under oath. So this could be a complete lie. But he says when we lease, there is no delivery because the gold physically does not, this is his words, by and large, does not move. The question then is, well, why can't we just do this in Sydney?
So, John, tell me this. Why is the location of gold in London so significant?
So the reason why it's significant is that I think, and I think a lot of the viewers think it's important that if Australia owns 80 tonnes of gold, the gold is physically in our possession. We have control over it. We can verify it, and we can be secure that our treasure is basically in our grasp. So the governor has been on the record several occasions, the gold's not coming back. No intention to buy, no intention to sell, no intention to repatriate the gold. What's the logic behind that is? We want to have access to the London market, which is the largest gold market in the world. Now, so the first point on this is, in 22 years, so the last time we sold or bought anything was 1997 when we sold 167 tonnes. And in 22 years, we've not bought, we've not sold. So if the RBA governor, what did he say at CEDA? No intention to buy, no intention to sell. So if there's no intention to buy and sell, why do you want access to the market? It has to be about leasing, because that's the only thing we're involved in. But what did the deputy governor say? When we lease, the gold doesn't move. So now, first one, he doesn't know whether it moves or not, but assume that's true. Why then do we need the gold in London? Why can't we bring back the gold why can't we bring back the gold to Martin Place? And then if we want to lease, because according to the RBA deputy governor, the gold does not have to move, well then, if we're going to charge 12 basis points, 0.12%, the gold can stay put in Sydney. We lease, we get the income, and everyone's happy. Now, I had an email from the RBA, 20th of September. This is the quote: "The RBA is not able to do anything which identifies a counterparty, but in the past we have lent to financial and non-financial corporates with operations in Australia." Now, this is significant because you think to yourself, well, if you're leasing, well, maybe it's too much of an issue for company representatives of the counterparty to come all the way to Sydney to check the gold if you're going to do a lease. Well, this statement says that every time they've leased, it's someone that has an operation in Australia. So now, so if you're going to lease and the gold doesn't have to move, just say it's Deutsche Bank or JP Morgan or a non-financial corporate, I mean, whatever the case may be, the local representatives could easily come to the vault and check. If they need to fly in a gold expert to check the gold once a year, for most of these major corporates, paying for someone to be able to do that That is a lot. But I would suspect that most of the people who are leasing the gold from us are financials. They would have all obviously operations in Melbourne and Sydney. Either they could hire domestic expertise around gold verification, or they can fly in one of their own international experts. But this is critical, because if the gold physically doesn't have to move, then this logic that we need access to the London market is completely fallacious.
Right, because effectively we're not going to buy and sell gold, we're only going to lease it. And as you say, leasing is clearly done without physically moving the gold around, so therefore it doesn't have to be in London. So,
I mean, Martin, tell me, am I crazy here, or am I really pulling holes in these claims that the RBA is making?
Well, it does seem very strange if, in fact, the reason the gold is in London is so that it can be traded, i.e. bought or sold, and we haven't ever bought or sold any since, 20 years plus. And if, in fact, the leasing arrangements are with Australian companies or Australian representatives of international companies, then it could certainly be done here rather than in London.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the question then becomes is, well, the governor refuses to bring back the gold, even though we've just gone through all this. The question is, well, why?
Yeah.
Does he know it's not there, or is he concerned that it's not there, but he doesn't want to ask?
Yeah, well, it could well be that by not asking the question, you might then be able to avoid having a difficult answer.
Potentially. And yet, we still have this $4 billion plus figure on the RBA's balance sheet, even though we don't have unfettered access. And obviously that brings me to sort of the sort of interesting story of the last week. So now, just so we're clear to the public and to our own government, I'm not a Russian agent. I've never had contact with the Russian government. I've never had contact with Russia Today. I'm sure you're not a Russian agent either. But Russia Today, the international TV station owned by the Russian government, decided to do a story about Australia's 80 tons of gold, and to a large extent it lifted our content, our discussion from last year. Now now this article was reposted on Zero Hedge, so this 80 tons has got new life in the last week, and the RT went to an individual called Ronan Manley, who's a precious metal analyst in Singapore for Bullion Star. I've never met the guy. I've never communicated with the guy. So independent gold analyst in Singapore says the following, quote, "There have never been any independent physical audits of this gold, which means that there is no way to verify the RBA's claim that it has all the gold it claims to have." So again, why won't the RBA bring back the gold? Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe it's been leased. Maybe the Bank of England has stolen and won't tell us. Or maybe we're just afraid to ask the question. When I look at all of this sort of stuff, there are more questions than answers. And just to make the point, the burden of proof is not for us to prove the gold is missing. The burden of proof is for the RBA to demonstrate that the gold exists, is secure, and we have our wealth intact. And they can't. Even this independent gold expert says, given the flaws, they can't verify that claim.
And just on that, because I think you're going to take some more quotes in a second, what we are really saying is that just because the Reserve Bank says the gold is there, etc., right? Just the words. The question is that necessary and sufficient for us to necessarily say, okay, and move on?
Yes. I mean, to accept the RBA's statement on face value with no evidence, no audit report, you really have to go back to the dark ages of Western civilization, where there was a belief in superstition. I mean, how did we get out of the dark ages? We embraced the Enlightenment, rational logic, evidence. That's all we're asking for. Show us the evidence. There is no evidence. Basically, the emperor wants us to accept, the word from on high on face value. For us to do that would be a betrayal, in my view, of the key canons of Western civilization, and I'm not willing to do that.
So, standing back, what we can say is that there is really no clarity with regard to the gold issue. There are more questions than answers being generated at the moment, and the recent RBA testimony does nothing to take away those questions, and in fact they've built more doubt into the story.
They've built more doubt, but the other thing they've also done is they've also flagged publicly that the next physical audit is in about 4 or 5 months' time. So again, the gold could all be there, it could all be safe, but if it has not, it's already tipped off the Bank of England for 4 or 5 months. Now, I'm sure they've already had a pre-agreed arrangement with the Bank of England we're coming, but they said publicly June 2019 is the next audit. I will be demanding that the RBA tell us how this audit will be done, what are the results of the audit when the audit has been completed. But if the gold is missing, if there is something afoot, we have already given the auditee sufficient notice to cover their tracks, which is one of the big issues I had with the 2013 audit.
Absolutely. Yes, Bank of England, they are on notice.
Yes.
John, thank you very much.
Thank you.
John Adams, Martin North. In the interest of the people, check back for our next episode. See you soon.